I'm paralyzed in the most literal sense of the word, okay? I'm not, I'm going to have no idea how to literally take the next step. It's definitely the case that we know that my eyes might in principle be deceiving me at any moment. We've had experience of people before subject to hallucinations, and even if we didn't, we don't know how to prove as a fundamental matter that our eyes never deceive us. That's absolutely right. But when we make the decision to get out of bed in the morning, we are assigning probabilities to the various hypotheses compatible with my seeing a floor by the bed. One hypothesis is there really is a floor there, and that's why I'm seeing it. Another hypothesis is my seeing the floor is a hallucination, and there's a cliff there. By getting out of bed in the morning, you endorse one of those hypotheses as more likely than another.
When Columbus's armada landed in the Caribbean, none of the natives were able to see the ships, even though they existed on the horizon. The reason that they never saw the ships was because they had no knowledge in their brains or no experience that clipper ships existed. So the shaman starts to notice that there's ripples out in the ocean, but he sees no ship, but he starts to wonder what's causing the effect. So every day he goes out and looks and looks and looks, and after a period of time, he's able to see the ships. And once he sees the ships, he tells everybody else that ships exist out there because everybody trusted and believed in him. They saw them also.
By getting out of bed in the morning, you endorse one of those hypotheses as more likely than another. That's the way we're used to proceeding in our ordinary lives. Why are you doing that? You have all kinds of memories.
We always perceive something after reflection in the mirror of memory.
If I were to use a little bit of poetic license and say, well, what would happen if we could actually tap into the different parts of the processing steps of the visual, of how we actually develop vision? The information, of course, first strikes our eyes and strikes the retina, but that information that creates certain nerve signals that then connect back to the primary parts of the brain where the images really begin to form. In the very basic, the primary visual cortex, as it's called, what we would see is something a little bit like this, where we're basically just talking about lines, shapes, colors. There's nothing really there that we can actually identify or see or even talk about, and we're certainly not conscious of this level of activity. So this is really just the raw data upon which is coming into the world, but we can't make any sense of that. So in that regard, vision itself doesn't really occur in the eyes. It doesn't even occur necessarily in the primary visual area. But if we start to go up in terms of the processing, when we get to a secondary level of processing, we're beginning to coalesce forms and shapes. We may be somewhat conscious of this state, which is maybe associated with something called blind sight, where people don't have that highest level of processing where we see the vivid world, because consciously they say, I can't see. But if you ask them to guess at what they're looking at or to navigate through a room with objects in it, they can usually do so reasonably well, as if they can see. So what's going on, we don't know for sure, but it seems that there's a disconnection between the secondary and the final level of processing. So we have some degree of awareness, but it's still not really that clear, vivid rendition of reality. And that doesn't happen until we get up to the final stages of our processing, which is in what's called the visual association area. And when we see that, this is where we would see this very vivid picture of what the world is about. We see all the colors, we see everything as if we can perceive it to be very real. And not only do we have this very real perception of it, but again, these association areas, as they're called, because they associate different pieces of information across the brain, connect this picture with memory banks. And if this is a picture of a dog, we identify it as a dog. We may have an emotional response to it. If we love dogs, then we have a warm, fuzzy feeling, and if we don't like dogs, then we may not like this kind of a picture. So it depends on what your experiences have been and how you ultimately process the information that really does create for you your visual world. So the brain itself is really what is doing all of your sensing. Conversely, the thing that I've always been fascinated about on just a very simplistic level is that when you stub your toe walking, when you bang into something, your toe hurts, but it's really hurting in your brain, and it's your brain that actually perceives the hurt, but you feel it all the way down in your toe.
It's the experiment with the upside-down glasses. This man Slater built these glasses made of prisms and lenses so that you saw things upside down. And he had a group of people wear these glasses, and he asked them to sustain wearing them. It was very uncomfortable for them because they saw people sort of walking upside down. But if they kept the glasses on, then after 2 to 3 weeks, depending upon the individual, then with the glasses on, flip, they saw everything right side up. And if they took the glasses off at that point, flip, they'd see things upside down. So what happens, the way I interpret that, is that the mindset was so strong that people walk right side up, that with the glasses on, that mindset created a force to cause the neural dendrites to grow in such a way as to create an inversion mirror in the brain. And then once that hardwired structure was built, and you take the glasses off, now it has to dissolve that structure in order to see things the way you expect to see them. That's called neural learning now. We do it all the time. And I think that's the way it goes. The dilemma is people don't manifest a lot of these things because their mindset, the mindset of our world, says that we can't do those things. Those things aren't real.
You okay? I heard you scream earlier. Was it another dream? You were an Indian, watching Columbus's ship materialize out of thin air. Wow. And this medicine man kept hitting you. Cool. Hey, maybe it was a past life, or a parallel reality, or a future life.
Get weird.
Or maybe that dream was trying to tell you the truth. I guess it just depends on what you think is real. Maybe you should try different anxiety pills.
My pills are fine, okay? Thank you.
Well, I have to go get dressed. I hope you feel better, Amanda.
God, Amanda, I could be such an asshole.
People ask me, why does quantum mechanics matter, given that it's little tiny stuff and who cares? There are three possible answers. From a practical point of view, it doesn't make any difference at all. I mean, you still have to go to work and drive your car and do all the rest of it. From a second point of view, it actually infiltrates everything in the world, especially the world of electronics. When you go to the supermarket and you do the scanning at the checkout, that's a quantum mechanical effect. But I think the important part is the third one, which is essentially a philosophical issue. Why are philosophers so passionate about deconstruction the assumptions of the world? I finally got it. I got it as a result of looking at quantum mechanics and comparing it to classical mechanics. They present two very different ways of thinking about the way that the world works and about what we are. So from a classical perspective, we are machines. And in machines, there's no room for a conscious experience. It doesn't matter if a machine dies, you can kill a machine, you can throw it in a dump, it doesn't matter. If that is the way that the world is, then people will behave in that way. But there's another way of thinking about the world which is suggested, it's pointed to by quantum mechanics, which suggested that the world is not this clockwork thing, but it's more like an organism. It's a highly interconnected organismic thing of some type, which extends through space and time. In that kind of environment, what I think and the way that I behave has a much greater impact, not only on myself, but on the rest of the world, than it would if it was a classical world. So from a very basic point of view having to do with morals and ethics, what I think affects the world. That's, I mean, in a sense, that's really the key for why a worldview change is important.
Let's talk about the subatomic world, and then we'll talk about what it's telling us about reality. The first thing I want to tell you about the subatomic world is it's totally a fantasy created by mad physicists trying to figure out what the heck is going on when they do these little experiments. By little experiments, I mean big energy in little spaces and little pieces of time. It gets pretty nutty at that realm of things, and so subatomic physics was invented to try to figure that all out. We need a new science down there. It's